Good morning with another Zepla post talking about the community bursting. I am filming this on July 5th after watching a crazy weekend for the 14 community as Asmongold tried out Final Fantasy XIV, but also as we build towards Endwalker, as the hype around this game grows, as you start to regularly see queues to log into game, as you start to see more and more people talking about what this community means to them, what it's defined as. Sometimes in the context of who's welcome, but other times just in like, here's what this community has to offer and here's what I like about it.
Hey Buns, so before I get into the video today, first of all, I wanted to mention, obviously, the new camera. It's pretty great. It's a Sony A7C, and check it out. Does auto
Whoa!
focus, baby. This is pretty cool. I'm really happy about it, but what I actually want to talk about here today is all the new players coming to Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah.
Wow, it has been the biggest wave I've ever seen, and it is very likely because of all of the prominent WoW content creators saying good things about the game, finally giving 14 a try and reporting back saying it's incredible. I just watched Jesse Cox's comparison of WoW and Final Fantasy 14. It was very well put together. It was very positive. I would agree with pretty much all of it. And I mean, so that's what I mean. Like, these content creators are going back and letting their communities know they're snoozing. They've been snoozing on this game for too long, and it's finally time.
Yeah, I think noting the production value, the WoW content creator community is larger and frankly better funded than the 14 community has, and as a result, there's room for people that get to the top that have whole production teams. Bellular, for example, has a 20-person company, 8 of which are dedicated to YouTube full time. Asmongold has, with Rich Campbell and others, there's a whole OTK infrastructure that's backing them at this point. Within the 14 space, there's only a handful, and usually when you're seeing something that's a collaborative thing in nature, it's something like Brian and I, where there's people who are in on it and have been in on it because it's a hobby, not something more like comic story in gaming, where there's people on staff who were brought on staff as part of that growth. And so there is like a sense there of production. I don't think that's actually what's happening with Jesse Cox. I think Jesse Cox, the production value is just incredible. I don't think it's that it's a lot more people working on it. I think it's just unreal, the production value. And it's not that we don't have highly produced videos. Things from Larry Czar, where there's obviously a very creative intent, to something like Ethis Asher, where it's just this beautiful experience. But to have that level of content put out at that consistency across that wide of a range of creators, the fact that when I want the news, I can go watch Asmongold react to it. I can watch Bellular break it down for me. I can watch Signs of Kalani tell it to me. Like, and I haven't scratched the surface of the number of people covering it. It's pretty incredible. And so when you talk about a portion of that base taking a look at Final Fantasy XIV, it's a lot of visibility. The Final Fantasy XIV directory sits anywhere between 2,000 and I'd say like 7,000 people watching it on a given day, depending on the time slot, and depending on what's going on in the game. When we talk about an event going on, something like, a new irregular tombstone, or, we just came off a live letter, not the moment of the live letter, but it's ended, patch days, things like that. It's not uncommon to see that number double, maybe triple. Then when you start to talk about marketing campaigns, things like fan fests, things like live letters, it'll spike for a little bit. When you talk about things like World First, it'll say sustained for the length of that event, with a heavy focus on whatever the top shiniest thing is to look at. And so there are times that the directory briefly peaks above like 100,000, but this weekend, I don't know exactly when this was filmed relative to this. This weekend you had Asmongold peaking above 200,000, and so, like, when people say, well, what does it even matter? Every minute that that person watches might be a minute that it's the first time they've ever seen the game, or they've been on the fence for a long time and now they're watching it because they want to see him, and as a result they're kind of watching this game. It's why Fat Chocobo campaigns exist. It's why free login campaigns exist. It's why 60% off base game sales exist. To get people interested, to catch their eye and get them into the game. As far as I know, he was not directly paid by Square Enix. Now, yes, at one point when I was watching him, he noted that he'd crossed over 5,000 subscribers. So like in one day. So like, is he being compensated for this? Absolutely. But not by Square Enix to my knowledge, unless he disclosed that and I just missed it. So from their perspective, it's really cheap advertising. And he was really great about it. So besides just Asmongold, as you watch people like Annie come in and be really excited, people like Haughty Chicken come in and be really excited, when you see people who are choosing to play it off stream but talk very positively about the game, so far I'm not seeing a bunch of people bash it. As a matter of fact, I reacted to Quasi talking about the game, and one of my issues like that I drew with him is like, hey, just be careful because you're really excited. You're maybe too excited. And I just want to make sure that's sustainable, because some of the things you're giving credit to 14 to would actually just be true of any new game. And so I think it's awesome that you're having a good time, but I just want to note, like, you might be giving us credit for too much.
To give it a try, I had the interview with Asmongold and Rich Campbell last week on the Allcraft podcast, and I know Rich is having an amazing time playing, and Asmon said that he will finally give it a try. And I mean, I could not be happier. This is amazing. This is an incredible time for Final Fantasy 14, and I want to welcome these people. I want to encourage people to be welcoming to the new players as well, because, I mean, I don't see myself as different from any of the new WoW refugees that are coming in. I myself, having been a WoW refugee that came during the Warlords of Draenor era, so welcome. Welcome, my long-lost World of Warcraft brother. I know that Final Fantasy XIV's community has been fairly insulated for some time. It has, for better or worse, been sort of a bubble. But as we see the game grow in popularity, that bubble must burst, and it is bursting, and I see this as good. I realize there are people out there who are afraid of change, and this makes them feel threatened in some way.
I mean, rightfully so, right? Like, you stumbled upon, through all of gaming, you stumbled upon this secret garden that's yours, and you know it's wonderful, and you're shocked that only you know it's wonderful. And at first you're like, how does nobody else know about this little garden that I'm living in? And then you realize, if we start to tear down the walls of the garden, if we start to invite the world in, my garden's not going to be the same. I mean, part of its beauty is that it's small, relative to the amount of eyeballs that WoW has on it. Total active subscribers, there are many websites that put it competitive. Going into WoW Classic, it was rumored to have passed it. Right now, it's rumored to have passed it, so it's not actually that small. It's not an indie game. But there is a attention that World of Warcraft gets when you go look in the Twitch directories, when you go look on YouTube, when you go look in Reddit communities, and you go look at the number of times an MMO is referenced in a major press article from Fox or ABC or CNN or whatever. They're aware of WoW, even though they don't necessarily report on games. But Final Fantasy XIV doesn't get referenced quite as often in some of these things, and that avoids a lot of the negative press that comes with it. It avoids a lot of the people who come in to see what the hype is about, but they don't really know what's going on. And so they may not be respectful of norms, they may not be respectful of unspoken rules. I know in Jesse Cox's video, he talked about how, like, hunt trains form, and there's this etiquette within the community. When you invite a bunch of new people in very quickly, etiquette like that can very quickly shift because you don't have time to onboard them. And so the new people are big enough as a group to make their own meta, and that could drastically change it. Being afraid of change is a natural trait, right? You know where you're at, and so it is possible where you're going is worse. But just because it's a natural feeling doesn't mean we should not allow for change. Like, being cautious, being aware of when things are changing, I think is healthy. But also being willing to accept that change, being willing to charge into that change. We have an incredible game that we play and we share. And why we would not want somebody to enjoy that is awesome. It's awesome. Why would we not want them to do that? If their game really is worse, like, why would we not want them to come play a better game? I think it's something we can definitely welcome people into. it will make a change in the community. It will. But I don't own this community any more today than I did the day I picked up A Realm Reborn. There's no ownership that comes with it. It never was mine. And just because I liked aspects of how it is now doesn't entitle me to stop it from changing into something that I'll just like a different set of aspects when we get there. I don't know where we're going, but it will be different.
Way, and they have been reacting fearfully, and I want to let people know to maybe chill out a little bit. It's going to be fine. It's actually much better to have growth and change rather than sit in the little bubble of stagnant pond water that just gets all stanky and gets the algae on it. It's like the mosquitoes start coming. There's so many mosquitoes out here lately. They're so annoying. With the change, with all the pouring in of new personalities, new faces, new perspectives, this is revitalizing for our community, and it is only good.
It really is. It really is. Once again, like the quasi post that I reacted to, like there's an overwhelming positivity that a new player brings. When we feel, let's say for example that another Q&A comes by and somebody asks about glamour space and they say there's nothing we can do. That will be like the billionth time that somebody has asked about glamour dresser space and we're like, oh, they can never change it. But a new person's like, 400? That's amazing. And so like there is this freshness, this excitement that new players bring. And sometimes it can kind of breathe life into the game for people who, we've been staring at the same issue that has yet to be addressed. Patch after patch after patch. And yes, the game's moving forward, but how come they never get to the thing I wanted them to get to? It's really nice, like bringing in new people, and games burn out people. People move on to different games, or they move on to a different stage in their life and they don't have time for this game, or they just want something new and different, or something happens. And so stagnant games do slowly die. You have to bring in new people. This is bringing in new people rapidly, and there is a fear that some of the things about the WoW community are going to make their way into this game, and maybe some of them will. I will tell you, this is not the first major WoW exodus into this game. It's not. And there are plenty of people who are leaving WoW specifically because of the community that has formed in aspects of it. So you have to remember, they're not happy about that either. And then to top that off, in my opinion, a lot of what makes WoW's community and the amount of friction within the time you spend within WoW feel so much more out in the open than 14's is the way they police their own community, as well as the way that their game systems encourage players to treat each other. When you have a system that encourages players to treat each other as a commodity, as these trusts that they're going to be tossed into, and if that person screws up, it's going to mess me up and it's going to put me behind for the week. So I swear to goodness, oh my gosh. And it creates this friction where there's this person I'm never going to see or interact again, and that has an opportunity to make my day worse by not being as good as I want them to be. And the game assigned them to me randomly, and I'm mad about it. And so it creates this friction where somebody who was very polite in a restaurant earlier gets out into traffic and is shouting obscenities. It's the same person. It's just a different situation.
I see only good coming from this. I know some people hear me say that and they're like, but what do you mean, Zepla? Only good? Don't you know how toxic that community is? Or that community? Have you heard how terrible they all are, every single one of them? And I'm always like, hold up, like, do you not hear yourself? Do you realize how unfriendly and unwelcoming you sound? So you're worried about them being unfriendly.
Yes, there was a tweet this weekend as a response to one of our tweets welcoming people into the game that said that if they come across Asmongold's character, they will do everything in their power to make his day worse. And that was going to be their way of proving that, right, we're going to show them how toxic they are when they're saying nothing but positive things about the game, and that the frustration around it is that the servers can't handle how many people are interested in them playing, and the solution to showing them how bad them being excited about the game is that I'm going to go out of my way to... What? These communities are not monoliths. There are times that the 14 community is stereotyped. There are times that the WoW community is stereotyped. They're massive. massive communities. They are not one thing. 14 is not people who, it is not only people who like anime, or people who only like Japanese culture-based things, or people who only raid Savage, or people who only do RP or ERP, people who are only interested in cosmetics, people who are only interested in lore. It is not any one thing. Odds are many of us actually make up multiple things. And yet, when we meet somebody else, you make up 4 or 5 things, I make up 4 or 5 things. We have 1 or 2 in common, but the others are different. The WoW community is the exact same. I don't understand where this comes from, that it's like, hey, that guy came in here, and I bet one day they're going to start a fight. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk up and punch them in the face. That'll show them. What are you talking about?
But you've built up all this hostility to people that you're getting ready. You're already being pretty unfriendly too with your attitude. I don't know how people go through life this way. I mean, you have to deal with people on an individual basis, and not set up these self-fulfilling prophecies where you're expecting someone to be hostile to you, so you're hostile to them before they've even had a chance to introduce themselves. You're saying to yourself, oh, well, I bet they're going to be like this, 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 and this. And you build up this hostility before you've even had a conversation with someone on one-on-one. And of course, if you engage with someone having that attitude, they may respond to that with hostility, sensing that from you, maybe even defensively. And then people will say, oh, well, I told you so. I knew that they'd be like that because not realizing that maybe it was your built up, maybe it was your attitude.
Right. I punched them in the face because I thought they were going to be mad, and then guess what? They got mad. Shocking.
Of unfriendliness that could have evoked this response from someone else. I don't think it's fair to place judgment on someone just because they happen to play a video game with a toxic reputation. I mean, haven't we all at some point in our lives played a game with a toxic reputation? Or if because they watched a streamer that you don't like that's not a basis for knowing someone or judging someone at all. And I think that life might be easier if you just give people the benefit of the doubt. Be kind first. See what happens. Let's also not pretend like it's a paradise here in the 14 community where nobody's toxic ever. I mean, I know that we all like to say it is generally positive, and it is. But I have met some of the most toxic people in the 14 community. They are rare, but they are here. I want to make this clear. I will not tolerate gatekeeping of any kind in my community. I won't do it. There's not a whole lot that we put the boot down hard on, but that is one thing that I take very personally. I take it very seriously because I want people to feel welcome. I want people to feel like they belong. That's kind of the whole guiding principle of this YouTube channel, of my streams. It is to make Final Fantasy XIV more accessible for new players. And accessible means, yeah, in part, teaching people about the world, teaching people about different game mechanics, but also, I mean, helping them feel welcome, helping them feel like this is easy, this is fun, you belong here. And so that's why I take this so personally, and that's why I decided it was important for me to speak out about it before it becomes an issue. Right now, I wouldn't say that it is widespread, at least in my community. People, I think, knowing that I came from WoW, tend to be more understanding and more cool about it. Now, I do not expect everybody to like everyone else. I'm not asking you to be best friends with every single person, but I think that the bare minimum we can offer other people is to give them the space to play the game on their own and decide if they like it for themselves. You know, if you...
Yeah, I think there's room for healthy debate within the community. I think there's room to disagree with people. I think the thing to keep in mind is that ideally we're all working to a better Final Fantasy XIV. And that doesn't mean our Final Fantasy XIV. It doesn't mean that every single thing that I think would make the game better has to come true or it's worse. It's going to be better because it's a shared experience. And so we're all kind of voting in a way. As we all interact on the forums, as we all log into the game and we all talk, there's going to be aspects of the game that move in a direction that you don't like. There's going to be aspects that move in a game in the ways that you do. It's ultimately it's a living thing that we all share, and the important thing to keep in mind is that we're all trying to make it better. We're all trying to get Final Fantasy XIV to a place that is even better than the great game that it is right now.
You don't like someone, let them be. Even your friends, you can let them be to a degree. I mean, in the sense of not putting pressure and expectations on them and just letting them make up their own mind about what they like and if they're having fun or not. I think this tribalism about the game is super unhealthy. I don't like it when someone says, oh, I want to go play Elder Scrolls Online for a while. Oh, I'm done with 14 for now. I want to go play another game. And their friends are like, ooh, what? You're going to do what? Like, back up, man. Why are you acting this way? This is your friend. This is someone you like. Shouldn't you, most of all, want them to be happy and to have fun? That is, it's creepy when the brand loyalty gets in the way of that. I'm really unsettled by that. And we have to remember that just because we like a product doesn't make it part of our identity. I was pretty hesitant to make this video at all because I didn't want to reinforce what I consider to be a false paradigm of us versus them. I didn't want to give anyone that idea or plant that seed, which I think is...
Zepla is such a positive force in the community. She's such a positive force in the community. I think being afraid to talk about something, it's not about us versus them, it's that I'm part of this community, and I don't want to see something that is in all communities be in mine uniquely. It's not that this is only in the WoW community or only in the 14 community. It's that she's saying there's this thing. What I'm hearing from her is that there's this thing that people do across the board, and I don't want it to be in the one place that I feel comfortable expressing what I want to see moving forward. It's not, I don't feel that I can go into other communities and tell them, hey, you guys should really be careful with this thing. You know, I don't know who you are, but I think you guys might be missing the point here. You don't know. But as somebody who is very well aware of the 14 community, there is something fair to say, hey, in the 14 community at least, in this place that I know that we have had these positive moments, that we are welcoming to new players, that we treat Sprouts phenomenally well as a general rule, it is fair to say, okay, there's this thing that happens out in the world, and right now there's an opportunity for it to happen here, and I don't want that to happen.
Is based on nothing. I don't think that turning on an application on my computer or going to a certain website on Twitch makes me different in any way. It doesn't make me better. It doesn't make me worse. It doesn't add to my personality. It doesn't change my identity. It just, it's a program that's on my computer screen, you know? And I think it's a really, really insane way to judge someone. So I felt like talking about it might somehow reinforce it, even if I'm saying, don't do that, you know? But since I kept having people asking me, am I worried about so-and-so, or I'm worried about these people or those people, I felt like, okay, maybe I should talk about it. Maybe talking about it and encouraging people to be welcoming will have a positive outcome in the end.
No, it would be a long reach for somebody to say that Zepla is the negative thing about this community. Yeah, she's positive to a fault. So, you know, I understand why she might be afraid of that. Obviously, Brian and I are not. We've been called a lot of things. So, no, I think it's absolutely fair for her to, from a position of a lot of visibility, say there is a fear that I feel is maybe a little unwarranted, and there are people defending in a way that I think is a little unwarranted. And I would just like to remind everybody that there was a time when they were welcomed into the 14 community, and it was pretty cool. And I think that it would be best if we gave everybody else that same chance.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, consider supporting the channel on Patreon or on...
You can't catch good pauses, guys. You can't do it. But either way, it was nice to listen to her talk about not necessarily the game itself, not necessarily upcoming content, but about the community that surrounds it. So it's just gaming, kinda.